I have given exactly one gift in my career that was ever called an insult to someone's face. And I remember the exact words the High Marshal used, because I wrote them down that night, so I would never forget how close I had come to being right too early. My name is Idris Kanu. 3 years ago, I was the junior half of a two-person liaison delegation to the Skarn High Assembly, sent to open the kind of relationship nobody expects to matter. A modest technical exchange, offered free, no treaty attached. The Skarn had inherited, the way half a dozen species in that arm of the galaxy had, a piece of precursor infrastructure, none of them built, and none of them fully understood. An orbital defense lattice, ancient past reckoning, that the Skarn called the Old Ring. It still worked. That was the problem. It fired on anything whose signal profile didn't match a registry 3,000 years dead, and every so often, it clipped a friendly transport that had drifted a few degrees off a corridor no living cartographer had drawn. We had a fix, not a weapon, not a shield, not anything that would have looked like tribute to a warrior culture. A relay beacon, cheap, small, built to broadcast a harmonic key that told the ring, "This is one of yours," in the grid's own dead language. We'd built the same thing for 2 other precursor legacy worlds already. It worked. I stood in the assembly chamber, under that long curved viewport with the daylight coming gold off the Skarn homeworld's western sea, and I offered it to them as a courtesy between neighbors. High Marshal Ron Tesk did not throw us out. He was too disciplined for that. He simply stood, scaled and armored in the ceremonial gray of his caste, and told the full assembly that the Skarn did not require charity from a species that had never fielded a warship worth logging. "A good idea," he said, in the tone you'd use on a child's drawing. Nothing more. A few of the younger officers behind him laughed, carefully, the way subordinates laugh when they're reading their superior's face, rather than finding anything funny. The relay sat unclaimed on the table between us, small and unimpressive next to the ceremonial weapons racked along the chamber wall, and I remember thinking that it looked exactly as harmless as he was describing it, and that this was precisely the point nobody in that room was interested in hearing. We packed it back into its case and flew home, and I did not go back to the Skarn system for 3 years. I filed the exchange, closed the delegation, and moved on to species who wanted what we were offering. I won't claim I never thought about it again. You don't forget being told, in front of an entire planetary assembly, that the thing you built to keep people alive wasn't worth a second glance. I went back last week, because they called us. The message didn't come through diplomatic channels. It came in clear, unencrypted, on every frequency Earth still monitored in that sector, which told me before I'd even opened the translation that something had gone past pride. The old ring had corrupted. Nobody knew why. A decayed core routine, a stray signal, 3,000 years of entropy finally catching up with itself. But it had stopped reading the registry at all. It had started firing on anything under it, which meant, now, the Skarn's own coastal cities. 6 of them, in the crosshairs of a system their own warfleet could not touch, because you cannot shoot down a thing built to survive orbital bombardment, and you cannot reason with a machine that isn't listening for reason. It was listening for one thing only, the harmonic key that told it, in its own dead language, that a signal belonged. The key we had offered them for free, 3 years ago, as a good idea, and nothing more. I won't pretend there wasn't a version of me that wanted to make them ask twice. There wasn't time for that version to win, and I'm glad, because he wouldn't have liked what waited for him at the end of this. What we sent back was not a fleet. It was a relief convoy, 2 engineering transports, a fabrication barge that could print relay beacons faster than any warship could have carried them, and 1 escort corvette that never had to power a weapon the entire voyage, because nobody shot at us. 26 people, no monster of Earth among us, no army, no message we thought needed sending beyond the coordinates and the words, "We're already coming." We reached Skarn orbit 9 hours after the ring took its first city district. I stood again in that same high assembly chamber, same curved viewport, same gold sea light coming through it, except the sea beyond it was half obscured now by smoke rising off the coastline, and the assembly floor was not full of ceremony. It was full of officers relaying casualty counts in flat, controlled voices that were only holding because the alternative was worse. Nobody laughed this time. Nobody had the composure left for it. Ron Tesk stood exactly where he'd stood 3 years before, in the same ceremonial gray, though I noticed his hands weren't steady the way I remembered them, and I understood that whatever pride had filled that room the last time I stood in it had already been spent trying, and failing, to solve this with everything the Skarn actually respected. He did not mock anything this time. He asked, once, quietly, whether the relay would work against a corrupted registry, and not just a live one. I told him I didn't know for certain. I told him it was the only idea we had, and it was the same idea, unchanged, that had been sitting on his table 3 years ago. He told them to let us try. My engineers moved fast, the way people move when the alternative is watching a city they've never seen burn from orbit. We seeded 11 relay beacons across the Skarn's inner defense perimeter in under 2 hours, broadcasting the harmonic key in a slow, patient loop, the same signal we'd have given them for nothing, back when nothing was on fire. The ring took 40 minutes to respond. 40 minutes is a long time to stand at a viewport with a burning coastline visible through it, and no way to know if the thing you built in a lab 2 systems away is going to hold. It held. The ring's targeting cycle slowed, stuttered, and settled. Not destroyed, not defeated, just finally, correctly, told that the shapes in its sky belonged. The bombardment stopped over the 7th district before it started. 6 cities kept the ones they hadn't already lost. Nobody in that chamber cheered. That surprised me less than it should have. The Skarn don't celebrate a wound closing. They count what it costs to close it, and they carry the number. I understood, watching them, that the count they were carrying wasn't only the casualties. It was 3 years. I stayed through the after-action reports, through the handoff of the relay's operating protocols to Skarn engineers who would maintain it themselves from here forward. That mattered to me, that they keep it, that it become theirs, and not a debt they owed us. When the last transport was cleared to lift, I went to the viewport to watch our convoy pull away against the same gold afternoon light that had been in that room the day we were laughed out of it. Ron Tesk came and stood beside me. He didn't speak for a long moment, and when he did, it wasn't the apology I'd half-braced for and didn't want anyway. He said only that the beacon net would carry his caste mark now, alongside the human designation, so that no Skarn officer who came after him would forget which idea had been the good one. Then he looked out at our ships, lifting into the daylight, small and unarmed, and already turning for home, and he could not, I watched him try twice, bring himself to look at me instead. Not from anger. I've seen Skarn anger, and it doesn't look like stillness. This was something else, the particular quiet of a proud man doing arithmetic he can't make come out any other way. 3 years of calling us harmless, and the only thing that had saved his cities was the harmless thing. I let him have the silence. Some debts aren't meant to be paid back in words, and I've learned, in this work, that the kindest thing you can do for someone standing at that particular window is let them keep facing it a little while longer, alone, until they're ready to turn around on their own terms. We lifted at dusk. 6 cities stood dark against a healing sky, and somewhere below us, a high marshal was still standing at a viewport, not looking at anything in particular, finally understanding what a good idea is actually worth.